There's something nobody tells you, and it might hurt to hear it now. Most of what you were taught about being a good man, a righteous man, a man of character, made you weaker, not stronger. And it's not your fault. It's conditioning. From birth, you were trained to please, obey, wait, and they called that virtue. But Machiavelli warned centuries ago, the path of blind virtue is the path of silent defeat. But you never realized it because they gave you these lies, wrapped in praise, in morality, in ready-made phrases that sound nice, but destroy your presence in the real world. And let me ask you something awkward. How many times have you been kind, patient, humble, loyal, gentle, and been treated as disposable? How many times have you done everything right and still fallen behind, while less prepared people moved forward? That's right. It's no coincidence. It's the system. A system that rewards obedience, not power, the appearance of virtue, not real strength, politics guided by reality, not ideals. And this video here is the game changer, because from now on, you're going to see the 10 lies that have kept you weak your whole life, and you're going to understand exactly how to transform them into tools of power. No conspiracy, no cynicism, no malice. I'm talking about strategy, reading the true nature of humanity, knowing when to be gentle and when to use calculated force, learning to be respected before being loved. At the end of this video, you will have two very clear choices: to remain the manageable man the world loves to control, or to become the man the world is compelled to respect. The choice begins now. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos. It's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul. An invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now. Not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder. You are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe, and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. When he finally realizes he's spent his life believing lies, something changes inside. It's almost like waking from a strange dream, one where everything seemed to make sense, until it didn't anymore. From a young age, he was taught that being good was enough, that following the right path would open magical doors. But the real world, the one Machiavelli understood like few others, operates with politics guided by reality, not ideals. And deep down, a person feels this. They realize that promises are never kept, that a pat on the back doesn't pay the bills, and that no one promotes someone simply for recognizing their kindness. That's when the first realization hits. Perhaps these virtues were disguised chains. Perhaps everything they taught him was just a way to keep him manageable, predictable, incapable of leading. And when he sees less prepared people advancing while he remains standing still, something throbs. He begins to question whether the end justifies the means, not in a cruel sense, but in the intelligent sense of finally taking control of his own destiny. If he observes carefully, he realizes that these 10 lies act as invisible cables pulling his behavior. They are silent rules, accepted by all, repeated like mantras by people who have never arrived anywhere. And yet they shape personality, limit decisions, and tame natural impulses of power. Machiavelli would call this a strategic error, living guided by fantastical ideals instead of decisions based on real human nature. For example, how many times has he been told, "Don't show off"? And how many times has the one who showed off received the credit? Or that maxim, patience is a virtue, while whoever acts first seizes the opportunity. These distortions are so common that they seem like absolute truths. But when he looks behind the scenes, he discovers that living like this is about avoiding being hated at all costs. And this transforms him into someone without presence, without impressiveness, almost without his own identity. It's the kind of posture that prevents virtù and fortuna from working in his favor. It is at this point that he understands the irony. The world never rewarded him for following these lies, but continued to demand that he follow them. The truth is simple and harsh. No one prospers by trying to please everyone. No one conquers territory using only kindness. No one builds a strong reputation by hiding their own potential. And contrary to what they taught, it is better to be respected than to be eternally underestimated. When he begins to see this, an unexpected feeling arises: freedom. The feeling that he can break these chains if he wants. That he can choose the calculated use of force when necessary, instead of living in obscurity. That he can have his own loyal armies, his habits, his projects, his discipline, protecting his inner territory. This perception creates something new in him, a constant adaptability, a readiness to change. And it is precisely this readiness that opens the door to the next point, the one that reveals how these lies begin in childhood. Looking back, he realizes that the conditioning began much earlier than he imagined. Back in childhood, those repeated phrases, "be good," "wait your turn," "don't talk back," "a well-behaved boy doesn't confront," seemed like harmless teachings, but in practice, they were the first pruning of the natural instinct for power. Machiavelli would say that this was where politics guided by reality, not ideals, began, transforming the future adult into someone obedient, predictable, and easy to manage. And the more he obeyed, the more praise he received, reinforcing a cycle where the appearance of virtue yielded pats on the back, but not autonomy. No one explained that. In the real world, life gives nothing to those who patiently wait in an imaginary queue. On the contrary, the queue doesn't even exist. And it is at this stage that the dangerous belief that fulfilling all the rules guarantees reward takes hold, when, in fact, this only creates men who avoid being hated at all costs, and for that very reason are never truly respected. This subtle detail shapes his personality without him even realizing it. Over time, this conditioning transforms into automatic behavior. He grows up believing he needs permission for everything, to speak, to act, to exist. It's as if he's always waiting for someone to ring a bell and say, "Now it's your turn to live." But the world doesn't work that way. Those who advance are those who act first, who trust their own decisions based on real human nature, who understand that virtù and fortuna walk with those who dare. Consider a simple example. As a child, he raised his hand to ask to go to the bathroom. As an adult, he metaphorically raises his hand to ask for validation before making any important decision. This makes him dependent, fragile, domesticated, and often he only realizes this when he sees someone less prepared but more daring, leading conversations, seizing opportunities, dominating spaces. Childhood conditioning built in him an army of obedient habits when it should have built his own loyal armies made of courage, action, and presence. The most dangerous thing is that this conditioning seems logical. He thinks, "I was raised to be this way, so this should protect me." But in the real game of life, this doesn't protect, it weakens. It teaches him to avoid conflict, avoid risk, avoid movement. It teaches him to believe that eternal patience is a virtue, when, in excess, it becomes a prison. It teaches him that the end justifies the means only for others, never for himself. And this attitude makes him the kind of man the world uses, but never promotes. The good news? All of this can be undone. Because when he begins to question these phrases he's heard since childhood, a new light emerges. The realization that he doesn't need to continue this script, that he can rewrite his own upbringing, that he can exchange automatic obedience for constant adaptability. And when this realization hits him, he finally begins to see the next point, the system that rewards obedience, not power. When he enters adulthood, he realizes an uncomfortable truth. The system wasn't created to train leaders, but to manufacture obedient people. It's almost like a large emotional assembly line, where everyone is trained to follow rules that no one questions. And the curious thing is that those who run this system perfectly understand Machiavelli's principle. Controlling the masses requires politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Therefore, the educational model exalts docile behavior, avoids any trace of boldness, and rewards those who don't create complications. Ultimately, it's a silent mechanism of domestication. Those who don't talk much are considered easy to deal with. Those who don't confront become good company, and so they grow up believing that the safe path is always the right one. But this path rarely leads to the top. Instead, it leads to a manageable, predictable life, where avoiding being hated seems more important than earning real respect. The system loves people like that, because they are easy to control. If he observes carefully, he notices something curious in the workplace, at university, even in relationships. Those who advance fastest are never the most obedient. It's those who take a stand. Those who understand the calculated use of force, not brute force, but force of voice, force of decision, force of presence. These are people who don't confuse being nice with being submissive. People who aren't afraid to make decisions based on real human nature, instead of following invented rules to keep everyone the same. And when he compares their trajectory with his own, he perceives the blind spot. The system doesn't reward those who follow instructions. It rewards those who take strategic risks. That's why he sees less prepared colleagues getting promotions. He sees leaders with inspiring speeches, but anything but nice attitudes rising quickly. Virtue and fortuna always seem to favor the bold, and he begins to wonder why he's left behind, even when doing everything right. The truth is that excessive obedience doesn't build power, it builds invisibility, and nobody respects someone who doesn't show up. The system only rewards leadership when it's useful to it. That is, when it brings results, not when it demonstrates virtue. It's at this point that a profound insight emerges. Perhaps he has lived believing in a path that never existed. Perhaps the game is different. Perhaps the end justifies the means in a strategic sense, where he needs to position himself as a protagonist and not as an accessory. When this idea takes hold, something inside him revolts, a desire to break the pattern, to create his own loyal armies, his projects, his limits, his vision of the future. And this change opens space for something even greater, because before moving forward, he needs to make a silent pact with himself. I choose power. Here begins the inner turning point, that silent change that no one sees, but which alters everything in the way he behaves. A moment arrives when he looks at his own life as if it were an unsigned contract, full of clauses that someone wrote for him to follow without question. But for the first time, he realizes he can tear up that document and write a new one. It's the moment he declares to himself, I choose power. And not power in the sense of stepping over someone, but in the sense that Machiavelli describes, taking control of one's own destiny with politics guided by reality, not by naive ideals. It's when he decides he will stop being a spectator of his own story and start being the protagonist, that he will choose where he steps instead of being pushed, that he will occupy space even if it makes some people turn up their noses. It is here that a new version of him begins to be born, more conscious, more firm, more difficult to manipulate. This contract is more emotional than rational. It's him telling himself that he will no longer avoid being hated at all costs, because he understands that respect and fear are closer than the world admits. It's him realizing that the appearance of virtue has its place, but only works when it doesn't become submission. That it's better to be feared than loved by those who don't respect him. And above all, that the end justifies the means when the means is protecting his dignity, his goals, and his boundaries. By signing this internal contract, he begins to see life as a chessboard where virtù and fortuna only favor those who move with strategic courage. This decision transforms not only how he acts, but also how he sees himself in the mirror. For the first time, he no longer sees a boy asking for permission. He sees a man ready to play the real game. The most interesting thing is that this silent decision begins to seep into his behavior. He speaks less, observes more, acts with more intention. He abandons habits that made him manageable and begins to cultivate his own loyal armies: discipline, focus, boundaries, self-control. He stops accepting emotional, professional, or social crumbs because he understands that value lies not in pleasing others, but in taking a stand. And this new posture creates an internal space where constant adaptability becomes the rule, not the exception. He begins to choose battles, calculate efforts, filter people, and each small action reinforces the contract. I choose power. But this contract demands an immediate decision: to stop trying to fit in. Because nothing sabotages a man more than the illusion that he needs to be like everyone else to be accepted. And that's exactly what paves the way for the next point, Rule 1. When he looks around, he realizes that most people spend their lives trying to be normal, trying to fit in, trying not to bother anyone, trying to be approved, accepted, validated. But Machiavelli already warned: those who try too hard to fit in lose any chance of exercising real power because they abandon their own identity to wear the identity that the system accepts. It's the perfect trap. Conformity turns him into just another face in the crowd, someone easy to manage, someone who practices politics guided by the ideals of others, not by the reality he lives. He begins to notice that the most respected men are precisely those who don't try to conform. They possess unique traits, quirks, firm opinions, and ironically, it is these strange details that build their presence. Because when he tries to blend in, the result is always the same: invisibility. Nobody respects someone who is like everyone else. Nobody follows someone who is just repeating what already exists. The truth is that blending in is comfortable, but expensive. He pays with autonomy, he pays with voice, he pays with reputation. Conforming too much makes him so predictable that anyone can manipulate him. He becomes the kind of man who avoids being hated, but is also never deeply respected. And in a scenario where decisions based on real human nature dominate, predictability is weakness. The men who lead are not afraid of their own strangeness. They use it as a crown. They understand that strategic eccentricity creates a personal brand that no one else can copy. And this uniqueness, when aligned with virtù and fortuna, creates a force that cannot be ignored. He begins to realize this when he observes people who naturally stand out, not by trying to attract attention, but by simply not erasing what makes them different. This insight confronts him. Perhaps what he tries to hide is exactly what would make him powerful. And when he finally accepts this idea, everything changes. He stops pruning his own behavior, stops minimizing his tastes, stops apologizing for existing. He begins to use his differences as an instrument, almost like a calculated use of force, not physical force, but a force of identity. He learns to resist the impulse to fit in because he understands that every powerful man has his own loyal armies, and his main army is his own authenticity. He stops following the script of being like everyone else, and this creates a constant adaptability that always puts him one step ahead. His presence changes. his gaze changes, and the world begins to react to what he really is, not to what he tried to appear to be. But along with this new authenticity comes another crucial point: the truth, and how to use it as a weapon, not as a weakness. He grew up hearing that the truth sets you free, but they forgot to explain the most important part. The truth sets you free when used wisely, because when he tries to be too transparent, he becomes an open book, easy to predict, easy to manipulate, easy to dismantle. And Machiavelli already said that in the game of power, whoever reveals everything gives an advantage to the enemy. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that no one respects those who talk too much. When he exposes every emotion, every plan, every insecurity, he loses the aura of mystery that protects his integrity. He thinks he's being honest, but in practice he's offering ammunition. And the real world works like this: whoever knows your weaknesses guides you. Whoever doesn't know your intentions respects you. He begins to realize that the end justifies the means when the means protect his strategy, and his strategy begins precisely in silence. True power lies not in what he says, but in what he chooses not to say. He discovers that withholding information is not falsehood. It is the calculated use of force. It is understanding that every word has an impact. Every response reveals a position. Every outburst opens breaches. When he speaks less, he observes more. And observation is one of the most underestimated skills in the game of life. He realizes that decisions based on real human nature require contextual analysis, not impulsive outbursts. Look at the example of great leaders. They don't talk about their plans ahead of time. They don't share everything with everyone. They don't expose vulnerabilities to just anyone. They know that virtù and fortuna favor those who protect their inner terrain. Radical truth is useful, yes, but it must be targeted, strategic, surgical. He learns to choose the truth that strengthens, not the one that exposes too much. It is at this point that he notices that honesty is not synonymous with naivete. Over time, he understands that truth is a tool, and tools are only useful when used intentionally. He stops answering questions that don't need answering, stops justifying choices that don't require justification, and stops explaining feelings to those who lack the maturity to understand them. He exchanges the childish need to be understood for the adult posture of being respected. This is the moment when he realizes how his own loyal armies begin to form within him: self-control, silence, reading the environment, strategic patience. This creates a constant adaptability that always puts him at an advantage, because no one can anticipate his moves. And as he becomes more selective about what he reveals, another dangerous lie emerges that needs to be dismantled: the idea that he must be humble all the time, even when it destroys him. He was taught from an early age that humility is an absolute virtue, almost a universal commandment. Always be humble, they would say, as if that were the key to every door. But in practice, he realizes that misunderstood humility becomes self-annihilation. Machiavelli would understand this clearly. When politics is guided by reality, not by ideals, it becomes evident that overly humble people become tools in the hands of others. He begins to notice that when he diminishes his own worth, the world simply agrees. When he minimizes his achievements, people believe him. When he avoids showing his abilities to avoid being hated, he becomes invisible. And invisibility in the game of life equals irrelevance. He realizes that it is better to be respected than to be loved by those who add nothing. And he understands that humility, when it becomes submission, ceases to be a virtue and becomes camouflaged weakness. Strategic humility is another story. It's the ability to know when to lower your head without losing dignity, when to listen without remaining silent, when to acknowledge limitations without diminishing your talent. It's the calculated use of emotional strength, a strength that doesn't shout, but positions itself. True leaders practice this kind of humility. They don't diminish themselves, they simply don't waste energy proving anything. They understand that the end justifies the means when the goal is to protect their own presence. And contrary to what he was taught, authentic humility doesn't require him to hide. It requires him to choose where to shine. It's a decision based on real human nature, not on magical beliefs about karma or the universe rewarding the good guys. Virtù and fortuna favor those who know how to consciously alternate firmness and gentleness. He begins to realize that he can be humble without fading into the background, and that this combination is rare, valuable, and powerful. When he applies this to his daily life, everything changes. He stops joking about his own achievements, stops deflecting compliments, stops saying it's nothing, when in fact it was a huge effort. He understands that accepting recognition is not arrogance, it's knowing the value of his own energy. By doing this, he sends a silent message to the world. I exist, and my work matters. This stance creates his own loyal army within him, self-confidence. This allows for constant adaptability that protects him from manipulation, because no one can control someone who knows their own worth. And the more he asserts himself, the more respected he becomes. He abandons the role of the overly humble and assumes the role of the man who stands firm. But there is another lie, even more dangerous, that needs to be dismantled, that he must be kind to everyone, all the time. He grows up believing that kindness is one of the greatest virtues a man can possess, and like all half-truths, it becomes dangerous when applied without limits. Because being kind to everyone all the time is not a virtue, it's self-betrayal. Machiavelli would understand this quickly, because politics guided by reality, not by ideals, makes it clear that the world tests those who are too kind. It tests them until they break. It tests them until they exploit. People observe those who always say yes, who are always available, who never complain, and they transform this behavior into an obligation. He begins to notice his own relationships and realizes that those who demand his kindness the most are precisely those who value it the least. When he rushes to solve everything, the world assumes it's his duty. When he gives space, the world takes over. And in the end, whoever tries to avoid being hated becomes just another useful resource for others. Kindness only has power when it comes with boundaries. Without boundaries, it becomes a sign of weakness. With boundaries, it becomes a sign of authority. He begins to understand that the calculated use of force doesn't mean being aggressive, but being clear about his limits. It means knowing how to say no without justifying. It means refusing unfair demands without guilt. It means not draining his energy to maintain the comfort of others. In practice, it's a decision based on real human nature. People respect those who respect themselves. And curiously, the more he asserts himself, the more people treat him with care. Because virtù and fortuna don't favor men who sacrifice themselves eternally. They favor men who know how to manage their emotional resources like their own loyal armies. He discovers that boundaries don't drive people away. They filter out the wrong ones. And this filter is what builds healthy relationships, strong professional connections, and an unwavering sense of self-worth. When he begins to adopt this new attitude, the impact is immediate. People who have become accustomed to using him find it strange. Those who benefited from his availability complain, and he realizes that this is a great sign. It means that for the first time, he is ceasing to be a resource and beginning to be a man. He abandons the role of too nice and assumes the identity of someone who offers kindness with wisdom, not with submission. This creates constant adaptability within him, because now his actions are guided by self-respect, not by fear of rejection. And With this change, he discovers something even deeper. The lie that says patience is always a virtue. A belief that imprisons more men than any other. And it is precisely this myth that he needs to confront next. From a young age, he heard that everything has its time and that patience always wins. The phrase seems beautiful, almost spiritual, but when applied blindly, it becomes a silent prison. The more he relies on this idea, the more stagnant he becomes. He waits for the perfect moment, the perfect sign, the perfect opportunity, which never comes. Machiavelli saw this clearly. Those who live waiting are conducting politics guided by ideals, not by reality. And reality is harsh. The world doesn't reward those who wait, it rewards those who act. He begins to realize that while he waits for his time, other people, less prepared, have already taken the place he wanted. And not because they were better, but because they moved first. Patience, when it becomes passivity, transforms into an enemy. An illusory promise that keeps good men sitting in the stands of their own lives, hoping to be noticed. He awakens when he realizes that great opportunities rarely present themselves clearly. They emerge disguised as chaos, risk, or discomfort. They demand action, not waiting. This is the moment he discovers the logic of the calculated use of force. Acting proactively, acting with purpose, acting even without absolute guarantees. People who prosper don't ask the universe for permission to begin. They start, stumble, adjust, adapt. They make decisions based on real human nature. He understands that virtù and fortuna don't favor those who observe. They favor those who invade the field, those who risk losing comfort to gain territory. And he sees examples of this in his life. That friend who got a job because he risked messaging someone influential. That colleague who started a business even without the ideal moment. Nothing fell from the sky for them. They created their own sky. When he adopts this proactive stance, everything changes. He stops asking, when will it be my turn? And starts asking, what can I do now? This simple shift creates his own loyal armies within him: courage, initiative, vision. He realizes that waiting too long has turned him into a spectator. Acting transforms him into a protagonist. This mindset generates constant adaptability because he learns that it's better to adjust the plan in motion than to build castles in the sand of endless waiting. And over time, he notices something even deeper. Many men don't act because they were taught to be loyal to everyone but themselves. A blind, burdensome loyalty that binds decisions and prevents any strategic leap. And it is precisely this lie, subtle, beautiful but destructive, that needs to be broken in the next point. He always heard that loyalty is everything, and it's true, but only when it's a choice, not a prison. Most men learn to confuse loyalty with submission, with standing by people who wouldn't do the same for them. Machiavelli already said that nobody follows abstract morality, they follow self-interest. And when he finally observes life with politics guided by reality, not by ideals, he realizes that his loyalty has been used against him many times. He gives himself to those who don't value him. He defends those who don't defend him. He carries people who would never carry his weight. And this creates an invisible chain. The more he tries to avoid being hated, the more he distances himself from himself. This blind loyalty weakens him because it binds him to expectations that are never fulfilled. And it transforms him into someone who is always available, always present, always sacrificing something without receiving the slightest reciprocity. True strength is born when he reverses this order. First, loyalty to himself, then conditional loyalty to others. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is the calculated use of emotional strength, its structural protection, its maturity. He begins to understand that decisions based on real human nature require discernment. People change as their interests change. That's how life works, not like in the idealistic moral tales he learned as a child. Therefore, he needs to build his own loyal armies, his boundaries, his values, his focus, his vision. People who want to walk with him need to be aligned, not dependent. This posture changes everything. Suddenly, he attracts strong people, not weak people. People who add value, not who drain it. People who respect his firmness, not who take advantage of his kindness. And the more he embraces this new loyalty, intelligent, selective, strategic, the more he realizes how virtù and fortuna favor the man who knows where he is going. He stops trying to save everyone, stops being an emotional crutch, stops being a safe haven for those who don't deserve it. Real loyalty demands reciprocity, demands exchange, demands presence from both sides. He learns that those who abandon him in the storm don't deserve to follow the sun. This awareness liberates him. He feels the weight lifting from his shoulders. And this freedom creates constant adaptability, because now he is no longer held hostage by the past or the promises of others. With his own energy recovered, he is able to clearly see the next great lie that weakens men in the modern world, the childish idea that life is meant to be happy. He was conditioned to believe that the purpose of life is to be happy, all the time preferably. A beautiful belief on paper, but absolutely destructive in practice. Because when someone sets happiness as their main goal, they end up becoming a slave to immediate pleasure and an enemy of discomfort. Machiavelli would understand this as a gigantic strategic error. No one grows when guided only by pleasant sensations. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, reveals that too much comfort weakens, softens, and diminishes the capacity to cope. He begins to realize that this constant search for feeling good makes him vulnerable. Any small difficulty becomes torment. Any obstacle becomes a reason to give up. Real life demands strength, and strength doesn't come from pleasure. It comes from friction. It comes from effort. It comes from managed pain. And the more he avoids discomfort, the weaker he becomes. When he observes people who have truly built something great, he sees a clear pattern. None of them prioritized happiness. They prioritized purpose. They prioritized building. They prioritized vision. They made decisions based on real human nature, not on sugary beliefs about constant well-being. And that changes everything. He sees entrepreneurs waking up early, athletes training injured, artists creating even without inspiration. He sees that virtù and fortuna favor those who expose themselves to strategic discomfort, not those who run from it. He understands that pleasure is a consequence, not a destination. It is the reward for effort, not a substitute. And he begins to notice that constantly seeking happiness only increases unhappiness, because any neutral moment feels like defeat. He abandons this childish logic and embraces an adult vision. Life is made of cycles, battles, challenges, and that is precisely what makes it meaningful. Over time, this change in mindset transforms everything. He stops asking, "What will make me happy now?" and starts asking, "What will make me stronger tomorrow?" He trades immediate pleasure for long-term pleasure, the kind that arises when he looks at himself and feels pride in the man he has become. This creates his own loyal armies within him: discipline, resilience, focus, clarity. And interestingly, the further he moves away from the blind pursuit of happiness, the more genuine moments of joy begin to appear. Because now his life is guided by direction, not emotion. This maturity generates a constant adaptability that accompanies him in any scenario. But there is still another deeply ingrained lie, one that makes men allow the unforgivable in the name of spiritual evolution. Always forgive and forget. He was taught that automatic forgiveness is a sign of maturity, nobility, and spiritual superiority. But Machiavelli would see this as an absurd error. Forgiving without consequence is the same as rewarding the offender. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that human beings repeat exactly what they don't pay a price for. And when he offers instant forgiveness, he sends a dangerous message to the world. My boundaries are elastic, you can hurt me again, and I will accept it. This transforms his life into fertile ground for emotional, professional, and even familial abuse. He begins to notice a pattern. Those who hurt him the most are the ones who know he will forgive quickly, and not out of calculated malice, but because in real human nature, people adapt to what you allow. The end justifies the means, when the means is to protect your dignity, and forgiveness without protection is self-sabotage. Forgiving is not forgetting. It's remembering intelligently. It's putting memory to work as your own loyal army, not as an emotional anchor. He realizes he doesn't need to hold grudges to maintain boundaries. He needs to maintain awareness. He needs to observe patterns. He needs to adjust access. This is the calculated use of emotional force, allowing life to move on, but not allowing the person to return to the same place they occupied before. Great leaders do exactly this. They don't eliminate everyone from their lives, but they adjust the radius of trust. They know that virtù and fortuna never favor the naive person who opens the door after every betrayal. He learns that true forgiveness is not a free pass, it's an internal reorganization. It's looking at someone and saying with silent respect, I don't hate you, but you no longer have the same closeness. And this is not revenge, it's self-preservation. When he incorporates this mature vision, his energy changes. He stops being the man who accepts everything and becomes the man who selects who can touch his life. This selection creates constant adaptability because now his emotions are no longer manipulated by those who know he always comes back. He begins to realize that strategic forgiveness opens up space, clears the mind, and strengthens his presence. Suddenly, the relationships that remain are more balanced, more genuine, more reciprocal. He realizes that he doesn't need to cut everyone off, but he does need to cut off access, and that makes a huge difference. And with each new decision, he develops a sharp sense of self-respect. But there is still a lie that silently corrodes men who have a good heart, the idea that one should never be selfish and that others always come first. He was trained from childhood to believe that being good is synonymous with self-sacrifice. Helping everyone before himself became almost an identity. But Machiavelli would explain this in a simple sentence. Whoever dedicates themselves too much to others loses power over themselves. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, shows that the world doesn't respect those who offer too much. It respects those who value themselves. Chronic self-sacrifice doesn't make him more loved, it makes him more useful. He begins to realize that he's always the first to hear about problems, the first to rush to help, the first to drop his plans to solve other people's chaos. And curiously, you're also the last to receive any care, consideration, or reciprocity. This silently destroys him. Because the more he tries to avoid being hated, the more he's perceived as a doormat, and nobody follows someone who doesn't know how to lead their own life. Being generous is beautiful. Being an emotional doormat is tragic. He needs to understand this difference urgently. Strategic generosity is a choice. Always putting others first is servitude. The calculated use of emotional strength requires him to know when to help and when to withdraw. It requires him to understand that decisions based on real human nature do not include emptying himself to please others. He begins to notice that when he sets boundaries, balanced people respect him, self-serving people complain. And this reaction is the perfect filter. Virtù and fortuna do not walk with those who carry everyone's weight, but with those who build their own loyal armies. Time, energy, projects, unwavering self-care. When he prioritizes his vision, his mental health, his ambition, something powerful happens. For the first time, the world begins to prioritize him too. He learns that the respect he receives begins with the respect he practices for himself. When he decides to put himself first, he doesn't become selfish, he becomes whole, and a whole man offers much more to the world than an exhausted man. He realizes that taking care of himself doesn't mean neglecting others, but establishing a balance that protects his dignity. This creates constant adaptability, because now his energy is directed, not wasted. He ceases to be an emotional tool and becomes an individual with a voice, boundaries, and intention. And this posture automatically places him in a position of influence, because people respect those who know how to respect themselves. But one last lie remains, perhaps the most insidious of all, the idea that playing it safe guarantees a protected life, when, in fact, too much security is the quickest path to oblivion. He grew up hearing that playing it safe is the smartest choice. Nothing too revealing, nothing too risky, nothing too ambitious. What no one told him is that this philosophy turns men into shadows, present but irrelevant. Machiavelli would never advise anyone to live like that. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, shows that absolute security is a fantasy, and worse, a fantasy that costs dearly. He observes his life and realizes that the moments when he grew the most were precisely those when he stepped out of his comfort zone, even trembling inside. By trying to avoid being hated, he also avoided being seen. By trying to avoid failing, he avoided winning. Too much security doesn't protect, it paralyzes. And the smaller he plays, the smaller he feels. It's a trap. The more he tries to ensure nothing goes wrong, the more he ensures nothing truly great happens. But taking risks doesn't mean acting foolishly. It means adopting calculated risk. It's the calculated use of force applied to decisions. He understands that decisions based on real human nature require courage, yes, but also context reading, analysis, and strategy. He begins to test small acts of daring, sending that message he always postponed, trying for that job he considered unattainable, opening that business that seemed too risky. And he realizes something powerful. The risk that once seemed like a monster was in fact just a dark corridor hiding an open door. Virtù and Fortuna never walk with the coward who waits for permission. They walk with those who advance while everyone else hesitates. He sees ordinary people building extraordinary lives simply because they accepted the discomfort of trying. And he realizes that all success has a price, and the price is audacity. Not recklessness, but movement. When he embraces this strategic lifestyle, something within him awakens. He stops living as a hostage to fear and begins to live as an ally of possibility. Each calculated risk creates his own loyal armies within him. Confidence, vision, initiative, emotional muscle. Constant adaptability becomes natural because he now sees change as an ally, not a threat. And with this new attitude, he realizes that the greatest risk has always been standing still. The greatest failure has always been not trying. The greatest enemy has always been false security. This understanding prepares the ground for his final transformation, the transition from a manageable man to a respected man. A man who understands that virtues are tools, not chains. A man who begins to see the game for what it is, and not for what they said it should be. When he looks back at everything he's lived through, he realizes something disturbing and liberating at the same time. It wasn't a lack of ability that kept him small, but the lies he was taught to believe. Every be nice, every wait your turn, every don't cause trouble, trained him to be manageable. And manageable men are useful, but never respected. Machiavelli would perfectly understand this logic. Too much virtue without strategy, becomes a chain. What seemed like morality was often just conditioning. But when he sees that these virtues can be tools, used with intention, with an understanding of reality, with maturity, everything changes. He discovers that power is not aggression, not shouting, not brute force. Power is perception. Power is knowing when to act and when to remain silent. Power is having your own loyal armies within yourself. Clarity, focus, limits, vision. And this perception opens a door he can no longer close. He realizes that respect is born from a combination of time, emotional control, and assertiveness, and that none of these are possible while he remains trapped in the lies he's repeated for so many years. From the moment he breaks those chains, he begins to walk like someone who knows where he's going. He starts speaking calmly, acting firmly, observing coldly. He develops constant adaptability, that ability to adjust without losing himself. And this transforms him. People begin to notice the change even before he announces it, because energy doesn't need to be explained. It's felt. Those who previously underestimated him now think twice. Those who previously manipulated him lose access. Those who previously controlled his life now need to step aside. He ceases to be a pawn and becomes part of the chessboard. And for the first time, he understands that this is only the beginning. Something bigger is forming. When he accepts this process, he stops seeking approval and starts building presence. He stops wanting to be loved and starts demanding respect. He stops seeking comfort and starts seeking growth. He understands that no man becomes powerful by accident. It's always a choice. A choice that needs to be renewed, strengthened, reaffirmed daily. But now he has something he never had before: awareness. With it comes a new kind of strength, silent, solid, unwavering. And with this strength arises a question he can no longer ignore. If all this is true, what do I do now? This question is the gateway to the final conclusion, where the journey ceases to be mere reflection and becomes action. And it is precisely there that we enter the last step in building this script. Ultimately, it all comes down to a single question. Do you want to continue living according to the lies you've been taught? Or are you finally ready to write your own rules? Because now you know what almost no one has ever had the courage to explain to you. You know that excessive humility makes you fade away. You know that limitless kindness destroys you. You know that too much patience paralyzes you. You know that blind loyalty chains you down. You know that constantly seeking happiness only weakens your soul. So tell me, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to close the video and go back to the routine that diminishes you? Or will you begin today, right now, to break each of the chains that have kept you small? Will it continue asking for permission to exist, or will it assume the place it should have had from the beginning? Will you continue trying to be accepted, or will you start to be respected? Remember, the world doesn't change when you learn. The world changes when you take action. And if you want to continue evolving on this journey, if you want to understand more deeply how to think, act, and position yourself with strength, strategy, and presence, then take advantage and subscribe to the channel now. Turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos, because I'm going to continue delivering the kind of knowledge that transforms manageable men into unshakable men. The choice remains yours. But now, for the first time, you have the right weapons.